Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Good morning, America. Welcome to USAPrepares.com. I am Rich Scheben from OffGridMontana.com, again sitting in for Vince Finelli. And I have a guest today, Dr. Rick Miller, and we're going to talk about a variety of subjects, from Donald Trump to sticking up for the little guy, the pharmaceutical industry, science. And before I introduce Rick, I just want to say that anything that you hear, whether it be from me or any of Vince's guests, I know none of us are anti-government. We're just anti-unlawful, overreaching, too big, corrupt, foreign-owned, foreign-run, incorporated, corrupt government. And that's my disclaimer. And Rick is a writer. He's obviously a doctor. He's a physicist, among other things. And he wrote a great article on his website, docram.com, about the state of the nation and that Trump is facing a full-blown coup d'etat sooner or later. He even mentions names like James Clapper, John Brennan. He talks about the CIA, the deep state, and the CFR, the UN, the Bilderberg Group, among others. And I'm going to have him talk about this. And I just want to mention one thing. I totally believe that the reason why Trump is under so much calamity and attack every second of the day is because he said that he wants to give America back to the people. And I believe that the globalists who have an addiction to power, money, and control are very scared. And if you think the globalist is a conspiracy theory, I can give you dozens of examples. Just one, when the EU created a draft legislation, the European Commission, for banning cash. In small print, it says privacy and anonymity does not constitute fundamental human rights. It's an addiction and grab of power, money, and control. So with that said, welcome, Dr. Rick Miller.
Good morning. It'll be nice to work with you this morning, Rich.
Oh, it'll be my honor, Rick. I met Rick in Missouri about 3, 4, or 5 years ago, Rick.
Yeah, a long time ago in a faraway universe, different than today.
Yeah, we spoke at Vince Finelli's Preparedness Expo down there.
Yeah, and then had that evening around table. I love those places like that, where we get a chance to actually meet each other. And I appreciated your books. I appreciated your support that you've given me on the encyclopedia, things of that nature. I can't speak highly enough of you.
Well, thank you.
You're a gentleman. My girlfriend likes you.
And I'll send you that last check, Rick, for saying that. Yeah.
Oh, no. It's me that is you. Listen, I completely appreciate what you're doing. And how did you get to Montana? I'll bet that is a real story someday.
Well, it is. I can make a long story short. It was a dream to live off-grid, to live in nature, to live a simpler life. And I realized early on, that's some of the things I talk about, that we have a different set of rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in. And the powers that be, on purpose, are trying to distract, dumb down, and divide the American people by race, gender, sex, religion, ideology, and generation. That's why you hear so much race baiting and gender baiting on the mainstream media. So I have an addiction myself to nature, edible and medicinal plants. I give tours on that, hunting and fishing, living off-grid, make my own energy, raising animals.
You came from New York?
I came from New York City. I spent my first 26 years in the metropolitan area of New York City.
I'm looking for you right now.
Yeah, I love it. You know what? I think variety and adventure is what makes a successful story for a man's life. And I've definitely had those things. So what I'm trying to do is dedicate my life at this point to helping out the bottom 93%, to asking everybody to stand for principle. And I hate seeing the United States of America turn into the divided groups of America.
I'm basically guessing that it's not 93%, it's more like 100%, and we've been invaded by something. I'm not kidding. To tell you the truth, even the 1%ers are afraid. And you can see it by the way they're behaving right now. Something else is going on, and things are out of control by everything. Now, the one thing that I do know is that in Jungian psychotherapy, control is considered a fantasy. To think that you can have control on something when the very concept of time has to do with a moment and discovery of that moment, everybody is missing the big picture. Something else is going on here. And I have to say that I, for one, have this awful feeling I'm never really going to know what happened. Everything is so convoluted. Everything has got so many different aspects to it in a false flags type of situation. It's like the Las Vegas situation, the shooting there. What actually happened? Who did what? FBI? What exactly happened there? And my guess is 6 or 7 different things, because people jumped on that bandwagon, an opportunity, and putting a spin on things that is plausible deniability, a place where you'll never really quite be able to prove it literally. And that part is what really disturbs me, because, I'm of the far left. I want to know, and, physics, I don't want to believe, I want to know. Turns out that my system of belief, physics, isn't any more closer to the truth than religion. It's like a closed system and white hole, black hole. And that's why we have 2 brains. I think that there's a new article that will be coming out on my writings, part of the non-local mind, that is going to publish as a preempt to let people know I'm about ready to come out with how to change this movie from a physics point of view. That does not mean you can do it. It means that you can think that you're doing it just like you think you know what's going on. But it doesn't work like that. And
well,
that's
Rick,
the part I'm concerned about.
And I 100% agree with what you just said. But what we really need right now, you were talking about how do we get the truth, or we're really going to know what's going on. What we need is heroes in not just America, but the Western world. We need people to think outside the box, do outside the box, go back to the Constitution or Bill of Rights. The people like, and I consider Trump to be in that hero category, even though he's so hated by the left, because if we had Hillary, we'd be in World War III with Russia.
That's right.
Our Constitution and Bill of Rights would be gone, including this show, because freedom of speech and the ability for the little guy, the bottom 93%, to protect themselves would not have that. We would not have that right.
I'm not even sure that North Korea now has a nuclear weapon. When they did that staging off of North Korea shores and that underground tavern collapsed, I think that was the end of their nuclear weapons. I think that we did a preemptive strike and took them out. And now they're going to be used as stooges for a blaming game that has nothing to do with reality.
Well, you look at most wars; they were false flags anyway, and that's one of the reasons I don't talk about foreign policy that much, Rick. Because you look at all the stuff that I talk about domestically with our economy and everything. Everything's such a psyop. You don't even know what's real. I think 50% of what I read domestically is totally fake.
Oh, and that's right. And the alternative news isn't any closer to the truth than we are. Trying to disseminate, I have determined that my truth lies inside myself. It's not out there. It's how my gut feels about it. And that, from a holographic concept, has to do with the physical plane, and then the emotional plane is how you feel about the physical plane with more data. And it's different for each of us. each of us brings to the show a different edge of what is probably called truth. And I think there are as many different truths out there as there are human beings. I think it works like that.
And that's why we need to congratulate heroes. You know, the Tommy Robinsons, Dinesh D'Souza's, Marine Le Pen, Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange from WikiLeaks. There's hundreds of them out there. What we really need to do is challenge the status quo, which is creating a caste system in America. And so much, even science, never mind the mainstream media and the hierarchy of government, but science is bought and paid for. And you're a science expert. And look at all the gag orders regarding things like geoengineering and weather manipulation and patents owned by Monsanto and Rothschilds. And look at all of these gag orders that are out there. We need people on the inside, whether it be CIA, FBI, intelligence agencies. I understand that New York City Police Department has a lot of information they haven't released on pedophilia. We need people on the inside to be heroes, step out, hit the media, hit the new media, and which is us and the Alex Joneses of the world, and say, hey, we need to get this information out. Because if we got the truth out, especially things like pedophilia, when a little child from 4 to 11 years old has that kind of trauma, they have zero probability of having a normal life. And we need to start speaking up and saying it like it is. So speaking of saying it like it is, Dr. Rick Miller, you wrote this article on Trump that I talked about briefly. Can you expand on this?
Well, I think you probably have even a better, accurate take than myself. I'm more of a nerd. I can tell you what I feel. I didn't vote for Trump. I voted against Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Okay, that's item one. Now, Trump is as much of a criminal as anyone is, and I didn't like his concepts of you're fired, ego, involvement, but Hillary Clinton is part of the established good old boy network, and there is a real problem with that kind of a president. And so, what do? You look at the choices. It's like being an ugly American, where you really don't have a choice, and you're not really voting for somebody, you're voting against somebody else. And that's not a real choice. Now, that's where I found myself with Donald Trump. I found that I'm noticing that Wall Street is improving. I've noticed that there seem to be more jobs right now. I've noticed that things...
And Rick, we have the music coming, buddy. Good morning, America. This is Rich Scheben, sitting in for Vincent Finelli today. And I'm with Dr. Rick Miller. We were talking about how reality and truth is under attack. And I want to mention one article that I mentioned on the air the other day, Rick, and that is, it was on Drudge Report. It was about Wonder Woman doing porn. Notice how I paused there. Anyway, what it basically is, they can take, with artificial intelligence, they can take your face, your head, put it on a different body. You could be robbing a bank, doing porn, doing child porn, doing any crime, killing somebody. You can do anything you want. They can get you. And if you go into the hospital for a procedure, they can take your DNA and place it anywhere and put you at the scene of a crime. We are really living in a virtual reality, politically correct Twilight Zone episode. So, Rick, please continue your thought. You were interrupted by the commercial. Please go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure where to pick up from where I left off. I'm more circular than that. I'm more spontaneous. That's creepy, what you just said, because, the way I used to judge something is by their history. And, like accomplishments. That's what made my life so rich, is the different things I've done that are finished, completo, done deal. And that's how you judge a man. Credentials aside, basically, what have you done in your life that literally stood out as something that you did? You're starting with high school and moving through graduate school, and then in the community itself. And I've noted, I'm embarrassed sometimes to call myself a scientist, because when I see a peer review group of scientists say that chemtrails are contrails, that's Carnegie Mellon, just make a note. It embarrasses me. And there's many groups now that are trying to use science in such a way that it discredits the quality of what science really can imply, like religion. Religion is the other side of science. It's like they're a closed system, the two of them, much like we have two brains, the white hole and the black hole. That's a way of looking at things. And science does not have the answers any more than religion does, and is one of the reasons why a lot of the laws in science changes every 20 years. We have a different way of looking at things. You know, this flat Earth thing that came out recently is silly, because you can prove, originally when you made an assumed truth, like the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, that limits what your physics can prove and do or not. Those are called assumed truths and definitions, and you start there before you have theorems and postulates and axioms and all the rest of it. And today we know that space is curved, and because space is curved, I can absolutely pick a form of mathematics that will show that the Earth's flat. But it isn't, because if you assume that it's flat, then that means that these are certain realities that are available to you, and these are ones that are not. And there's conflicting data. And so how do you justify that? Well, we sweep that under the table and we call it paranormal. It's outside, it's miracles, it's God's will, it's this or that, ignoring it. Now, fundamentalism is a creepy thing because it belies the concepts of logic, which is why you have that other brain. You're supposed to keep the two of them in balance with each other and have a closed system that the truth for you is inside yourself, not outside by something else. And so I'm realizing the limitations of my choice in professions. And when I see what's going on in the sciences today, I'm appalled, and I'm not certain what to do except to stay to my true beliefs and try to realize that my beliefs are arbitrary. If I had been born in Pakistan, I would not be a Christian. Now, what does that say to a fundamentalist? And suggest that a belief is a tool, just like a sweater is. You wouldn't wear a sweater in the heat of summer, and yet you don't want to throw your favorite sweater away. Well, what do? You use it like a tool to accomplish a goal. But the goal is not the belief. The belief is a tool. In a tool.
And Rick, that's a great place to finish up for the next break. We'll catch you on the other side. Stay with us, America. Good morning, America. This is Rich Scheben from offgridmontana.com, sitting in for Vincent Finelli this morning. And I want to comment on a few things you had said, Rick. First of all, I'm so glad that the Earth is I really look forward to December 21st and winter solstice, because for us people who live off-grid, it's really important to start getting our days a little longer so I can get more solar. And next thing, you were talking about how you're kind of embarrassed a little bit about what so-called scientists are saying. You use the term contrails and things like that. But think about the agenda. It's to distract, dumb down, and divide the American people by groups. So we have lowered our bars of standards so far down on the bottom, especially for getting a job. How many articles have you read in the last 2 years where graduates can't even read? High school graduates are illiterate. So with Common Core and things of that nature, we've lowered the common denominator, and they're using this as an alibi or as an excuse. And I think you know more than anybody that we have been force-fed. A Marxist, Alinsky, Frankfurt School, Cloward and Piven, Communist Manifesto sandwich. We're so drunk on the Kool-Aid of political correctness, we've actually allowed ourselves to be the guinea pigs to set the stage for government interventions, confiscation, redistribution of wealth. And that's why they use things like group identity politics. And they use certain code words.
There's witch hunts going on right now with the idea, you're going to find I'm very circular, hard to pin me down. Sorry about that, Rich.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Rick.
I know people have a tough time holding me in, to focus. But the idea of witch hunts and, people that are groping, people that, like Dustin Hoffman and now Donald Trump, some of this is real and some of this is hysteria of political correctness that has gone overboard. And I notice that while they're all very quick to go after the actors and famous people, somehow they haven't included Iraq and what they do to women. And, it's one thing as a young boy going for his first kiss to be slapped in the face or accepted. And it's another to kid and joke around that is inappropriate because of position or rank. And I think this is like a witch hunt right now. And the way the feminist movement is trying to take advantage of a situation that has good, bad, and ugly aspects to it. And I call them out in that sense of it pretty much like, not Betty Davis. What was the woman actress that had to retract because she said it comes with the territory? When you put a lot of perfume on and sexy dresses, what do you expect a man to do? Now, there's responsibility on both sides to this whole issue. And I've tried to be a gentleman throughout my entire life and have made mistakes and learned from it. But to use these as a political way to break actors and or presidents, I have to question intentionality.
Well, I'm going to comment on that, Rick, if you don't mind. I saw.
Yes, okay, yes.
I saw an article. I think you even put that article on your website where O'Reilly has an audio proving that this woman was trying to set up Trump for several $100,000 and say that she did something sexually to him. So apparently this is on tape. So it's going to be interesting when this comes out. And who knows
the
if
problem is
that's
it's going to be like everything else. What's real? Well, probably it's true. It has an element of truth in it, just like the innocent kid that goes for a first kiss. Is he groping and needs to be ostracized? Or what exactly is consent? What does consent imply?
Well, you know what? You got to look a little deeper into this. Now, I'm going to give you a multiple choice question here. Harvey Weinstein. I've asked this question to many, many women on other radio shows, in green rooms, in talks, in private. And I go, he's about 65, 66 years old, somewhere in there. And I go, what do you think of his looks? And 99% pretty much says things like fat and ugly, okay? This is what women tell me when I ask that specific question. So that being said, I go, how come for a mid-60s man, he always has women hanging all over him at parties and news conferences and things like that? Is it because he's gorgeous looking and fit and has high standards? Is it because he is charming and witty and funny? Or is it because he has a lot of money and power? See, there's an addiction to money, power, and control, which this is what goes back to how I always say this is an addiction. And these people want to control the masses. And everybody has to stand up to the fact of reality that these women are with him, not for choice A and B, but choice C. And people need to be called on that. It's the same thing.
I had an incident happen to me once in Eugene, Oregon. Now, Oregon is famous for battered women, and they're chased to cowgirls get the blues, a place where women have safe haven and are protected. And James Hillman, one of my teachers, explained to me the difference between anima and animus. They are not. Bisexuality is not the same for a woman as it is a man. It has to do with women's mysteries and Esther Harding, if anybody's interested in doing a little bit of homework. However, what happened was I went into this bookstore. lost in Eugene. I didn't know where I was going, and I asked the woman behind the counter, could she help me? And she pulled out a phone book and immediately had the answer. She was really smart. And I said, good girl. And when I said that, that woman was going to beat me up. Now, I had no clue what I had done wrong. I had meant a compliment to her, and it was taken wrongly. And I apologized, and it was all I could do to get out of that bookstore and not be beaten up by a woman because I had said something about referring to her as a girl rather than a woman. I had no idea political correctness. And the innocence of my complimenting her and it turning into brought to me an image of what's wrong with the way our society is going in terms of what's right and what's wrong and moral codes of ethics. Now, I'm a moral man. I'm not an ethical man. I'm a moral man. I try to walk my talk. And I appreciate, and I was humbly sorry that I did not mean to offend her. I meant a compliment. And yet, she had a choice.
Well, I'm going to step in here, Rick, real quick. You just breathed a sigh, so I'm going to jump in and take advantage of that, okay? Albert Einstein says that I fear the day that technology will surpass human interactions and the world will have generations of idiots. And that's pretty much where we're on the front porch of that scenario right now because people have not learned the ability to communicate or listen or speak or have intelligent conversation. And that's why a lot of the people who are protesting are chanting and screaming and doing violence. And going back to the sex thing, I put a comment in my book saying that sex should be adult, mutual, consensual sex. That means no pedophilia. You don't have to beat women up or blindfold them or handcuff them or be rough. I mean, there's plenty of things you can do in the category of adult, mutual, consensual sex. And apparently the globalists did not like that.
Well, everything is usually ruled off of guilt. Guilt is a powerful type of self-regulation, and it is used as a tool. There's a book out called Kink, and it says in that book that 80% of America is into some form of bondage because of guilt. Now, I am a purer person. I don't get it. I can tell you where pedophilia came from. 14th century, having sex with children makes you younger, supposedly, like bathing in blood, which came from Transylvania. These are lodges that are using older belief systems as a way for immortality. And I can tell you, immortality has nothing to do with sex, children, or time. Time is not real, which means you already, in one sense of it, are immortal. And right now, if you don't believe that, I can tell you that consciousness is a dream state, that there are certain dream states that have more content to reality than our conscious waking state, and it is about the moment, not the future or the past, the moment. And what you're trying to do is make that sacred over the profane by extending it so that it has no sense of time anymore. That is where immortality lies. And I can tell you further that all these different lodges, and by the way, all large bureaucracies and institutions now have some kind of secret inner lodge within them. The Republican Party comes to mind, Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove out of L.A., all of them. And that's one of the reasons I had to armor up in the occult in the first place. It was like coming out of high school and going to college. I got rushed. And I got rushed by all these different lodges, and I had to armor up and make a decision on what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do and whom I wanted to be inside myself. And that's the main problem. Most people do not have access to themselves. That's why all the saints in history have stressed the importance of training the mind and going internal. The truth is not out there. And unfortunately, like Molnar and the rest of them, the truth is inside yourself. And I have discovered it's different for each of us. And that's what made us God's favorite, was choice. And that's my personal moral codes of ethics in terms of the way I'm going to try to run my ship. And I'll try to do it right, and I make mistakes, and I'm old enough now, I've made a bunch of mistakes, and have a better, truer trim on my sail in terms of how I'm trying to govern myself.
Rick, we will... Good morning, America. I am Rich Scheben from offgridmontana.com, sitting in for Vincent Finelli today. And, Rick, I want to comment on a couple things you just mentioned. You talked about how most people don't have... I use the term opportunity, you use a couple of other different terms. It's just semantics. But economically, to work for themselves. Most people today, depending on what group they're in, they don't get restitution. They don't have good jobs because hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications no longer matter compared to getting a job based on what group you're from. There's no protection under the law, especially if you're in the bottom 93%, only if it can be politicized and get one group against another, like race, gender, sex, religion, ideology, generation, etc. So the lawyers, the judges, the bankers, the politicians, they're all bought and paid for. There's no way people can control, or let me put it this way, it's getting very difficult for people to control their own destiny today. And this is why, I don't know if you ever heard me on the air, I talk about practice what you preach laws. Like, for example, how many people are gun protection proponents or let's say opponents? They want to get rid of guns, but yet they have the audacity to hire people to carry guns to protect them, often in politics, and use taxpayer monies to do it. Or how many people talk about our carbon footprint being too large for global warming, and yet they're flying all over the world in jets and living in huge houses, often multiple houses. See, we can't say hypocrisy and double standards anymore. We can't say that's the way it is or that'll never change anymore. That's basically an admission to ignorance, apathy, and indifference. So what we need to do, the people, is have practice what you preach laws, and I feel if we did that, a lot of the things that we're discussing, from the politically correct buzzwords to the inequality to the corruption, manipulation, nepotism, and deception from the top down, I think a lot of that could change. What do you think, Rick?
Well, yeah, the idea of when Ducky Mallard was asked what's the difference between ethics and morals, and his response was, an ethical man knows not to cheat on his wife. A moral man won't. Now, that's what Frank Herbert called guilds. And the Bene Gesserit and the Space Guild and the Mentats, they each had a belief system, unique and different, that brought a level of moral codes of ethics and rules of conduct, the rules of engagement. And that is what is missing in our society, because most everyone now cheats with themselves. And when you cheat with yourself, you create guilt within yourself because you know the difference. And that guilt is now being used as a tool to control you. And I can tell you that once you find your own center, self-realization, the ability to know exactly how you personally feel about something has nothing to do with what I believe. Now you're running your own ship. And that is what we call maritime law, the captain and commander place, the place where you are running the ship the way you feel that ship could be run. And it's different for each of us. And that's what made us God's favorite, is that choice. And I feel that it gives us the length, girth, and width of what makes us humanity. I can't speak for others. I can only speak for myself. And I'm trying to do the right thing, and I make mistakes, and thank God for my friends that show me their ways of doing things so I can then have a true measure of how I want to run my own ship. I, don't know what... It's almost like the fourth enemy of man, where I'm too old to do anything about it. I will say this. Our children are possibly the single most important resource America has right now. And the concept of homeschooling, charter schools, and the rest of it, I just posted something on charter schools on my website that's alarming.
I've read that article, too. Rick, I'm going to have to stop you right there. We got another break coming up at the top of the hour. We will be back with Dr. Rick Miller shortly. Good morning, America. This is Rich Scheben, sitting in for Vincent Finelli today. And I'm with Dr. Rick Miller. And Rick, I want to comment on what you said, because I love saying what I'm about to say, and I've said it before, and you offered me the perfect bridge or dovetail into this topic. We're basically talking rules, laws, and accountabilities, and I could justify putting ethics, morals, values under rules, and I could justify putting consequences for one's behavior under accountability. But unfortunately, we've lowered the bars of standards and expectations so much, especially for getting and keeping a job, that we have a different set of ethics, morals, values, and consequences for one's behavior based on victim group status or protectionist group status, or what the mainstream media dovetails it or labels it as identity politics, for the purpose so people don't know what's going on, to dumb down the people. Now, please don't interrupt until I'm done. I won't be long. But talking about morals, values, and ethics, today in America, people are marrying children, pets, farm animals, inanimate objects. The marriage word has been changed by definition. I read just the other day that we now have more women having babies out of wedlock than in wedlock. Now, this is where we're going, and a lot of people don't have foresight and don't know how to shoot pool or play chess. And what I mean by that is the best pool players and chess players can see 2, 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. We have to see the trees through the forest. I'm also reading articles where in 10 to 30 years, most countries could be under Sharia law. I'm also reading articles that less than 30% of men want to get married because they've been so killed over the past several generations in divorce, they don't even want to get married. They just want to date. And the divorce rate in America today is over 70%, depending on what you read. Some places say it's up to 75%. So I want to put that in context. See, it all goes back to a separate set of rules, laws, and accountability. Group identity politics. That's the home run pitch. When I say stand for principle, I say we need to have the same rules, laws, and accountability. We have to stand for truth, which means objective facts and not subjective emotional opinion. In other words, we have to have the guts to be willing to be hated for telling the truth in lieu of blowing smoke up someone's ass and telling certain people or groups what they want to hear. And if someone else does it because of what group they're in and they have less consequences for their behavior, you should do it. And when the American people get so disgusted with this, that's when we need to come out with practice what you preach laws. Because you didn't address when I was talking about the people saying hypocrisy and double standards, and that's the way it is, and they'll never change. If we had practice what you preach laws, all these politically correct buzzwords, including equality, fairness, tolerance, diversity, prosperity, accountability, inclusiveness, all these words have been changed by definition to use as a tool, as a weapon to divide the American people. Now, Rick, please comment. Thank you.
I'm not sure I can do a follow-up on that. You know, it's different for each of us. And a lot of that is because we learned how to do it from our parents. Pedophilia is something you learn how to do, like gambling, spousal abuse, and the rest of it. And that's why our children are our single most important resource. And the way Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young sang it, teach your children well, because they're more intelligent than we are, and they're watching how we do it. And it's a shame. It's a tragedy in terms of losing such things as cursive, which teaches you how to go from right to left brain, how to go from one side of an issue to another. That's what cursive actually does. And I remember when I was in grade school, I'm 73. When I was in grade school, we were required Latin in second grade. Sum est, sumest est sunt. And I'll tell you what, today, a kid doesn't even know how to point on a ruler where 1 inch and 5/16 is. Now, you tell me what's wrong with that. Our children are very smart, and yet the millenniums are not practical. They have no concept of the basics, because the family unit, which is where you would learn that, has been broken, just like law enforcement and politics.
Well, Rick, let me step in here. The words father, mother, husband, boy, girl, by definition, the powers that be, even in our own public schools, are saying don't say it. Public schools are teaching kids as young as 5 and 6 about choosing your own identity when they're confused.
Gender specific.
The families and fathers have been replaced by the state. Fathers have been kicked out of the house for the most part. So you see where I'm going. The powers that be, they have to do a divide and conquer strategy and lower the bars of standards and expectations to conquer. It's the same thing that was done in Rome. Now, let me give you an example of what's happening. In the state of Maine, this happened about a year or two ago. The ACLU up there publicly said that female genital mutilation shouldn't be a crime. Hello, Rick?
Yes.
We're living in a virtual reality, politically correct Twilight Zone episode where women think the so-called left Democrats, which have been taken over by the globalists, are going to benefit them. They are going to be in for a really rude awakening, and so is everybody else. When our traditions, culture, and heritage gets eliminated, deleted, this is what the stuff is going to be. This is going to be normalization.
Have you noticed
this is the new police
all of
state.
The accusations are about money?
Well, it's money, power, and control. I mean,
the women that they're suing. It's not about ostracizing or trying to put someone in jail. It's about money.
Well, and it's going to get a lot worse. California just made murder legal. If you have AIDS or HIV or hepatitis, you can have sex without a felony. So things are going to get a lot worse in that realm. And I think a lot of these new narratives that have just came out is because there's been so many people caught doing pedophilia. Not just Congress, not just high corporate executives, not just Hollywood. A lot of the rich and famous have been involved in this pedophilia. And this is not just a USA thing. This is a worldwide phenomenon.
By the way, there's a whole other one that bathes in blood.
Right, exactly.
All is about immortality.
Yeah.
And I can tell you which grimoires they come from. The grimoire is a magic book in a given century. And each century had their own different ideas of what magic was in terms of how to achieve immortality. And really, the way Jungian psychotherapy says it is that you live in the moment. So I have my own rules of engagement. I apologize for offending anyone. I mean not to do that like a Quaker. But if you don't mind, I'm still going to aim this rifle at you to protect my family.
Well, Rick, I'll tell you something.
That's a Quaker joke.
One of the things that we need to do is talk about things that are hard to discuss, and that's what we do on the new media, because we have to give people the opportunity and the guts to say it like it is.
Or to find out for themselves what's true for them. And each of us is different.
Well, it is, but I'm saying a lot of objective facts here. Okay, restitution or rights are not available depending on what group you're in. The middle class is on the chopping block. Censorship and surveillance is the new police state. I mean, when I talked about pedophilia, let me give you an objective fact. The president of the Young Democrats under Mayor de Blasio of New York City was involved in pedophilia. Okay, this is why the mainstream media doesn't talk about this. We need to change things from the bottom up and not the top down.
Over in England, did you realize how many people were involved in England? And there were counselors and or politicians in England that went down this last year. It's unbelievable.
Well, and that's the people who were not just indicted, but convicted. Can you imagine how many people are hiding behind the scenes who haven't been fingered yet?
Yeah.
And, and what we got to remember with pedophilia, folks, is I'm going to be repetitive on this, young people stand no chance of a normal life when they've been abused by someone they trust at that age. No chance. Zero.
Well, it creates a blockage, a learned behavior. And it's terrible because this is our resource. It's like, skinning a tree. There's no way it's going to be able to live right.
Well, there's so many things, there's so many stories out there that's been made public, like about normalizing rape, police hiding statistics in certain Western countries if it's done by certain migrant groups. Kellyanne Conway, Democrat congressman, says she looks familiar on her knees when she was sitting on her knees on a sofa in the Oval Office. Project Veritas has a video of teachers' unions defending raping children. That woman from The View, Joy Behar, said Bill Clinton's rape victims are tramps. We are setting ourselves up for Sharia law. So if you want it, keep not saying anything and keep having a separate set of rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in. And that's the bottom line. If you're going to let media propaganda, Hegelian dialectic, professional wordsmithing, subliminal messaging influence your life to that point, then America's done. Because
so
you have been made submissive and your will is over.
Our cultures now need heroes. And, models, role models of...
We need whistleblowers. We need whistleblowers to basically talk about the crimes of corruption, manipulation, deception, money hoarding, power, money, and control. All these, the people inside the intelligence agencies, the Project Veritas, that whole company to me is a hero. They're all heroes. Okay? I think that's what we need in America. We need people to step up and say, hey, we need the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody on American soil. I mean, how come 90% of people, Rick, live in urban suburban America and municipal water has fluoride, which is cancer-causing, often a main ingredient in rat poison. China labels it as a pesticide. It makes women sterile and everybody else docile. You know, these things have to be mentioned, just like Margaret Sanger, who founded Planned Parenthood. She said, let's keep the black population under control. This is an audio and video.
Are they separating the restrooms in grade schools now and making them, this gender...
and Rick, we'll be back after the break, buddy. We got a break coming. Good morning, America. This is Rich Scheben, sitting in for Vincent Finelli today, and my guest is Dr. Rick Miller. And Rick, we've had some great discussions over the past hour and a half, things that need to be said out in public as well, because I think the need for small talk has to decrease. We have to have intellectual conversation. We have to tackle political correctness, because it is absolutely not just divided and conquered us, but lowered our bars of standards and expectations. It's insulted the work ethic, ability, and intelligence of all these people shoved into these groups. It's degraded and disrespected groups. It's eliminated synergy from the equation, and it has done everything but empower a nation or a group by lowering these bars of standards and expectations. It's made us all, too many people, submissive and broken their will. And that's why the number one cause of death in America for people 50 and under is drug overdose, and that is a country in despair. So moving on, I want to talk about one last topic because we have 1/2 hour left here, Rick. We said we discussed this. What's your opinion about the pharmaceutical industry, a.k.a. Big Pharma? Rick?
It's broken, just like everything else. It's all governed around money and the idea of putting someone on a script rather than healing them. The idea that you need medicine for the rest of your life to regulate or change or fix something rather than fixing it and moving on. Prescriptions, and we know now how the opiate industry has benefited from this whole mess of things, and now we have a nation of addicts. And the distinction between pain and regulation of pain and coping with pain and addiction is a very fine line. And that's the difference of what has happened to our pharmaceutical industry. And my recommendation is that if you have prescriptions or need chemistry of some kind, you start thinking in terms of an herbal pharmacy where you become independent of the source that you had primarily been using previously. And that's because you can't even trust what you're getting in a prescription now.
Well said, Rick. Well said. And, I'm a 20-plus year veteran of the pharmaceutical industry, and, I think you read my book, correct? So you know that They are a very corrupt, manipulated system, and
well, it's all
they don't care about cure. They don't care about
health and healing.
Yeah,
it's about
they care
money.
about managing symptoms for profit. That's basically what it is. In fact,
and that's why our medical industry is broken now.
Right.
And you can't trust most doctors. And my doctor, I've had him for 30-some years. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, whether I should fire him or not. I can't talk to him. You know, he's not interested in that part of it. And his office staff is rude because it's as if I, have to follow their rules, not them following my needs.
Well, I think most Americans know by now that the AMA, the FDA, and the medical schools are bought and paid for by Big Pharma. In fact, I put a few articles in my book, and I'll just mention one right now. Big Pharma criminality, no longer a conspiracy theory. Bribery, fraud, price fixing, now a matter of public record. We're now seeing GlaxoSmithKline pleading guilty to bribery, fraud, and other crimes.
I had a friend that was an addict. He was into opiates. He finally got himself clear and clean and began a thing called NA, Narcotics Anonymous, where he ran the organization here locally. And then he wrenched his shoulder. And what do you think the doctors did to that man? It's a tragedy what's happening in America.
It is.
And think about this. Had massive surgery on one of my hips where I walked out of the hospital without any form of pain medicine. Yes, I was a terrible person to be around the first day, and yes, I also healed 4 times faster than if I had been on something like Tramadol. Now, what does that suggest to you? That these medicines often are not hiding pain. Actually, what they do is they take your consciousness down to a place where you don't care. Now, that's not healing in any sense or health. And the difference between one person and another in the union of what's healing and what's health is the distinction of why in China you pay your doctor when you're healthy and you do not pay him when you get sick.
Good morning, America. This is Rich Scheben from OffGridMontana.com, sitting in for Vincent Finelli. And we're getting down and dirty and tackling political correctness and talking about a lot of things, including Donald Trump sticking up for the little guy, the pharmaceutical industry, and much more. Now, when I was talking earlier, I just want to finish my statement, is that GlaxoSmithKline has been routinely bribing doctors with luxury vacations and speaking gigs while fabricating drug safety data and lying to the FDA. They've been caught defrauding Medicare and Medicaid out of billions of dollars. That's money out of your pocket, people, here in America. GSK has also deceived regulators about the effectiveness of their drugs. This is one article. I've got dozens of articles here. You wouldn't believe how they made us reps stick up for them and put out fires during their alleged illegal behaviors that they were doing, okay? Now, just think, I have a question. Well, let me make one more statement. I would say, since we were talking about rules, laws, and accountability and things like ethics, morals, values, and consequences for one's behavior, I would say that GlaxoSmithKline showed me that means nothing. And that statement, you can put that in ink on paper. The only thing it means to me is it all depends on what group you're from. But think about this, folks. Not one single CEO or executive has ever been prosecuted. Now, what if you as an individual went around to your county and your state falsifying data? You were in business. You were selling a fraudulent product to the government, lying to regulators, engaging in anti-trade price fixing, and things of that nature. What would happen? I'll tell you what would happen. You'd go to prison. You would not have in your coffers billions of dollars of cash. You would not be in business like they are. But see, we have a fascist system in America where the big corporate oligarchies are protected by big government and the mainstream media and the court system. Our judges, our lawyers, and our bankers and politicians are bought and paid for. So, Rick, I want to hand it over to you, but Answer that one question. If you as an individual went around town doing this, bribing doctors, falsifying data, selling a fraudulent product to the government, lying to regulators, et cetera, what would happen to you if you had a business, Rick?
Well, I like to go to see what Iceland did with their hangthebankers.com. They actually did a public execution of 40 bankers. Now, I will love the day when Donald Trump literally puts Hillary Clinton in leg irons. That will be that day of celebration, of knowing that America is coming back into true. She won't. He probably won't be able to do that, but I will love to see that happen. And a number of other people like this, Soros or whatever his name, I can't even pronounce it. Soros.
Yeah, George Soros, yeah.
Yeah, those are criminals of the highest order. War crimes of Geneva should be tried publicly in the world trade, not the New World Order allowing that kind of crap to go on. And what's going to happen next is once they cannot basically discredit Trump, they will then try an attempt on his life. And what will happen next is that the United States will go into civil war, and that's Plan B of Agenda 21, because it's easier to rule a bunch of small countries over a large one like the United States is now. That's my prediction of what's going to happen next.
Well, Rick, what's happening is a lot of those people, like the names you just mentioned, like George Soros and many, many more, there's 8 people in the world who have a higher net worth than half of the globe combined. Think about that, people. But these people have enough money to literally pay for treason, sedition, and espionage in our own country. And if Trump has the guts and the ability to put people in jail for, I can't believe that the fact that Hillary Clinton sold 20% of our uranium in the heartland of America to Russia, and nothing happened. Can you imagine if you or I did anything like that? If I went over the border, I live on the Canadian border here. If I went over the border with a rock in my pocket of uranium, well, it wouldn't be in my pocket because I wouldn't want the radiation. Anyway, if I went over the border with any contraband, I'd be in the hoosgow. I'd be fined. I'd be cuffed and bagged. See, we have a separate set of rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in, the aristocracy versus the serfs. At the bottom 93 levels, it's based on race, gender, sex, religion, ideology, and generation. That's how they divide us. If we can get together and even the rule of law, never mind rules and accountability, we don't even have a rule of law in this country. We have no restitution. We have no rights depending on what group you're from. And GlaxoSmithKline is a great example. We need to stand for principle, folks. 96% of shareholders for Monsanto voted to not disclose what's in their GMO foods. And Monsanto will always survive because they're always splintering companies under different names. This is what's happening. We need to stick together. It's important
to remember that Monsanto originally was a weapons company that created Agent Orange and 2,4-D. It worked for old man DuPont. It was a weapons company that then went into seed control, and now it's gone into GMOs. It's a weapons company. Always has been.
Yeah, pretty scary stuff. And we could talk about that all day, but for you shareholders of the GlaxoSmithKlines or the Monsantos out there, is it really worth it to do all this for the money? Really? What if you stood for principle? What if principle actually mattered? If we don't, then everything is going to be normalized. Surveillance, censorship, financial, economic confiscation.
And we do have the energy to make these changes. In fact, I'm watching them happen right now in the free state of Jefferson, where law enforcement is broken. I'm watching from, my own little piece of land here. It's just unbelievable what's happening in America. And it's happening right in front of each of our eyes, and you all know it. Now what are you going to do? If you don't know what to do, watch what a combat vet does when it gets his hair up his ass. And I'm even talking about militias. That's where we go into civil war. And that is not, truthfully, what we really, really want to do. And they are attacking California right now with strange weapons. Why? You know, the San Bernardino, the San Diego fires, what the heck you think is actually going on? How is it that a forest fire can slag glass? That's not a forest fire. Why is the media not on that like they were Nixon, Watergate? What has happened to our media?
Bought and paid for, Rick. Bought and paid for. And when we were talking about all these women coming forth with, you know, he raped me or he sexual assaulted me or whatever, I just want to give a few statistics out, okay? And this is a worldwide situation. Combat deaths for men, 99.9% male. 94%. Homicide, 76%. Suicide, 75%. Male privilege isn't cracked up to what it is, because, first of all, we don't even live within 6 years of the average female. So if we don't have synergy, prepare for Sharia law. If we keep doing and letting the mainstream media basically manage and manufacture perception, pity, guilt, and ideology, and sway public opinion and hold on to the narratives without us thinking or saying anything about it, I guarantee you one thing: Sharia law will be here, and at least our liberty, freedom, and health will be severely compromised. Rick?
They've already infiltrated our homeschooling systems.
Yep.
That's another post on Facebook that I did yesterday. So we're
I saw that.
At the end of days.
I read that article before. Yep, you're absolutely right.
Infiltration and divide and conquer from within. And basically, the truth lies within yourself. You know exactly how you really feel about things. That's where your real truth and answer is going to be. Look inside yourself.
And I don't disagree, but sometimes you got to go behind closed doors to find out why people are doing certain things. You know, you mentioned about a husband and wife cheating on one another. I know a lot of people, man or woman, that their partner doesn't like sex anymore. Or maybe they let themselves go and they're no longer attracted to the other person. Or maybe there's so many reasons. Sometimes you got to go behind closed doors, and if you don't, you shouldn't judge, because it's tough enough on the person just to stay married today. And that's why I touted out some of those statistics. But, Rick, Pat, we're running short on time here. I mentioned this yesterday.
I can't believe it.
Well, I want to mention, since you have a doctorate, okay? You're a physicist, among other things. Think about the social indoctrination in college. I mention all the time that 90% of the college degrees are almost worthless. Plus, you cost so much, you miss out on the time leverage of establishing equity, principle, and assets, because you have to rent when you get out of school because you have such a high school loan. Now, some of the things that I've mentioned on the air occasionally, I think I even mentioned this yesterday, the University of California has chill zones, mats and beanbag chairs for naps.
Oh,
the University of Michigan.
Weird.
Trump derangement syndrome.
That's what they call
I mention a few things. This is the comedy hour right here. Okay, Trump derangement syndrome. They have enlist services of psychologists in a room full of Play-Doh and bubbles. University of Arkansas eliminates C grades to start with B grade levels so they don't hurt people's feelings. Universities around the country are saying the American flag is a symbol of hate. College students are intimidated by masculine wood paneling. I mean, I can go on and on and on. This is truly the comedy hour. This should be a late-night show right here. So do you really feel that if 90% of the college degrees are worthless, which I think they do, unless you go into something like nursing or engineering, I don't think it's worth it. I think trade schools are the way to go.
Here's the deal. It's not about your education. It's what you do with it.
Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be back with our last break before the final segment. Dr. Rick Miller will get you on the other side. Good morning, America. This is Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli today. And my guest is Dr. Rick Miller. And, Rick, we've had some real good conversation today, and I think this is the conversation the American people needs to hear and do, and eliminate small talk and political correctness. We need to start saying it like it is and trying to help the little guy. Try to create light at the end of the tunnel programs for the American people. And what would be your last words regarding that context, Rick?
Well, let's start with our children. Let's start trying to at least teach them correctly. And I don't know how to do that. I'm too old to do that. I'm going to try to, I know they don't read, so I'm going to try to reach them through comic books. I love comics. I'm going to try to become a hero. I was not the real Dr. Strange, but Doc Ram, and write comic books for children. Because while they don't read anymore, they do read comics. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm too old for that anymore. Fourth enemy of man, old age.
Well, in my book, in Chapter 15, I talk about self-sufficiency preparedness schools all over.
Sustainable lifeboats. That's right. You know, have your own ship running maritime law, captain and commander, run it your way, and the answers on how to do that are internally. And when you run into conflict, ignore that part and always go with your heart.
Well, absolutely, but we got to stop continuing to teach our children how to push buttons, manage paper, and be politically correct, because they're not learning skill sets.
You know, typing, for example. I'll bet they're great at thumb wrestling. I couldn't imagine trying to type with my thumb. And right now, I just posted how dangerous it is on cell phones being publicly stated by engineers and physicists now saying these are toxic to put up next to your head.
Yep. I read an article on that today. Yep, you're absolutely right. Well, Rick, I tell you, I want to first thank you for your kind words to me in the beginning of the broadcast. I don't know if I said thank you. So.
You're a good person, and I appreciate what you're trying to do. And thanking you for helping Vincent and me. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to do this. I think the world of both of you guys. And Vincent Finelli, he's a patriot. He cares about the people. He cares about his family. And he's just an honor to know. So that being said, we're down to the last couple of minutes before the break.
Okay,
Rick, do you have any words of wisdom for America?
RichardAllenMiller.com.
Yeah, and your website, you got some good articles. That you're a great writer, by the way, and that's why you have the books. In fact, I think I think that's kind of how we met. I don't think we met speaking next to one another. I think we had booths both selling our books, and I think we were right next to each other, weren't we, in Missouri?
Yes, it's always been a pleasure to work with you, too. You're a good writer also, and are an inspiration. I think Montana's a cool place for you to hang out right now. Where are you? Are you in the northern part? Where are you in Montana?
Yeah, I'm in northwest Montana. I am, you know where Whitefish is?
I absolutely do. Do you know that mountain there is full of bear grass? And bear grass is a natural resource that your previous governor was working with me to market into Holland. You know, with TransCanada 1 running right into Thunder Bay, you guys are a natural resource in making money with bear grass. And you can start with a color wheel.
Rick, we have so many natural resources here, and timber is one of them. And unfortunately, the powers that be are letting our forests burn and burn down houses. We lost 11 houses here in northwest Montana just this summer in the West Kootenai. And,
I know, yeah.
You know, we need to bring back logging at least to manage the forest. Everything needs to be managed. Everything needs discipline. Everything needs supervision. But it's got to come from the bottom up for commerce and to help the people. We're not doing that anymore. Political correctness has eliminated timber harvesting. We have grizzly bears. I had 5 grizzly bears on and near my property just this year. I mean, I can't walk around this property without packing. In fact, one of my neighbors saw a sow and 2 cubs just a week ago.
And you think a big enough weapon to stop a grizzly?
Well, you have to carry a shotgun. If you're going to carry a pistol, minimum 44 Magnum. But if you're going to carry a shotgun with slugs, a shotgun with slugs alternating with buckshot is probably your best chance of survival.
My dad was a bounty hunter.